Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new build on Spellslant. Today we're looking at a deck that I've played against a few times on the channel before, but I've never actually played myself, and I've been very interested in it lately, and that is Rakdos Control. Starting us off, we've got 15 removal spells here. 3 copies of Firebolt, 1 mana deal 2 damage, and then Flashback for 5, so it gives us a little bit of a card advantage. We've got 4 copies of Lightning Bolt, 4 copies of Chainer's Edict. You can hardly think about playing Control without playing these 8 cards in the main deck. We've also got 4 copies of Terminate, hits pretty much everything, including opposing anglers. We've got some card draw, 4 copies of Night's Whisper, nice cheap card draw that deals us 2 life, but we do have plenty of ways to gain life in this deck. So other than that, we've got Thorn of the Black Rose, 4 mana for a 1/3 with Death Touch, and it makes you the Monarch, which means that at the beginning of your end step, you draw a card. But the drawback to this is that when your opponent deals you combat damage with some of their creatures, they become the Monarch, so they steal your crown, right? So they can become the Monarch and they start drawing cards at the end of their end step. So the idea here is to play Thorn of the Black Rose and play it on an empty board, or play it on a board that you can control with your removal, so that you can basically draw tons and tons of cards with Thorn of the Black Rose. We've also got a nice little discard package here. 2 copies of Raven's Crime lets us ditch our lands in the mid to late game for extra value, which lets us either protect our creatures or get rid of threats that the opponent might have been holding or whatnot. We've got 3 copies of Duress. Again, good pretty much throughout every matchup at any point in the game. Usually this won't whiff, or it'll at least give us some really important information. And this is what I consider to be the flex slot of the deck, which is Liliana's Spectre. Kind of been on the fence about this card. The reason why I've kept it is because it does interact pretty well with Delver lists, where you can play for 3 mana, have them discard a card, and it also blocks Delver Secrets fairly well, trading with it. So it's kind of like a 2-for-1, and it's also quite good at getting back the Monarchy, which, if we were to happen to lose it, we'd have a hard time getting it back, since we only have 4 copies of Thorn of the Black Rose, 2 Spectres, and 3 Anglers, really. So this little flyer is actually quite important to us, though I'm kind of wondering whether another card might just be better. In our finishers slot, we've got 3 copies of Pristine Talisman, which looks kind of weird, but it does ramp us for 3 mana and gains us a life every time we tap it. And we've also got Evincar's Justice here, which is one of the main finishers in the deck. It's a 4 mana spell, sorcery. You can deal 2 damage to each creature and each player, and you can also buy it back for 3 mana. So for 7 mana, you can deal 2 damage to everything, which usually sweeps the board, and start hitting your opponent for 2. So if you're doing that and you have Pristine Talisman, you're only taking 1, or if you have 2 talismans, you're not taking any damage off the Evincar's Justice, and you can eventually just ping your opponent to death with this 7 mana spell, which has been a pretty useful strategy in the past. And then to wrap this off, we've got Gurmag Angler, 5/5 with Delve. Pretty, one of the best creatures in the format right now, and it's just, when you've got tons and tons of removal to keep the board clear, and you can keep their hand empty of opposing removal, a big chunky 5/5 can usually get the job done. Over in the lands, we got 4 copies of Bloodfell Caves. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 mountains, 4 swamps, 4 Rakdos Carnariums, and these are really important because they let us get our value lands back, which are Radiant Fountain and Bojuka Bog. Radiant Fountain lets us gain a ton of life over the course of the game, especially when we have Carnarium. We can gain 2, 4, 6 life off these, which can be really important in certain matchups. And Bojuka Bog gives us main board graveyard hate, which can be awesome. Most decks in Pauper do have some sort of synergy with the graveyard, just because it's just a really good thing to do. And Bojuka Bog kind of hoses that for pretty much everybody. So really nice to have in the main deck. Over to the sideboard, we've got 1 copy of Grim Harvest, which is a 2 mana instant that lets you return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. This is really good against opposing control decks, because it lets us get back our Gurmag Anglers, our Spectres, and our Thorns, which they've killed, and it recovers, so you can get the card back whenever they kill another creature, and then you can just get it back again. So it's a really nice engine that we can get going in the late game against other control decks. We got 4 copies of Choking Sands, which are really good against our Tron, which I am so sick and tired of losing to. So we got 4 copies here. We're never really going to board this against decks that run swamps. So it's basically just a Stone Rain that deals 2 damage to people. I've got an extra copy of Evincar's Justice for other decks that kind of go wide, or decks that, you really want to kill all their creatures, like fairies and delvers and things like that. So that's there. We've got 4 copies of Gorilla Shaman. One of the decks that I think we're going to struggle against is Affinity. So Gorilla Shaman as a 4-of seems to make sense to me. We got 4 copies of Pyroblast and 1 single copy of Relic of Progenitus. So that is our Rakdos Control. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you in the games.